on it, and Lou's going to lead us in a time of worship, so we can really not just listen to what I've got to say, but listen to God and what he wants to say and speak to us today. So that's the way around we're going to do it. I was hoping, could I have my little clicker, Ken? Sorry, we're not organised. It might be working. Those words of confidence. Do you get it on? Do I get it on? Oh, sorry. There, we're off to a wonderful start. I can't think of anybody less qualified to talk to you about construction than I am. I have many gifts, but building things is not one of them. However, I do know enough to know that building the right foundations is really, really important. You will probably know of or even experienced yourself building horror stories. Has anybody had a building horror story? Oh, that's good. That's good. Oh, there has been one or two. When we first moved into our house, where we're currently living, it was a new build, and the house next door was being built as well by a different builder, thankfully. This was October 2020, and we asked, when will we have neighbours? When will next door be finished? The answer was about 6 months. Great, we thought we'll have neighbours in 6 months. When we actually moved into our home in April 2021, we noticed not much had happened. And we asked again, when do you think it'll be finished? About 3 months. Okay, that was April 2021. We're now in winter 2024, and the house still isn't finished. It has had problems. And the biggest problem they had when they had built the house and they were about to put the roof on, they discovered a problem with the foundations. And they had to pull the entire house down and start all over again, which was pretty costly. It is so important to build strong foundations. And so Jesus finishes the Sermon on the Mount, this incredible, weighty piece of teaching that we've been studying. He finishes it with a warning. Now, this passage is often treated as a sort of Sunday school story, isn't it? I wonder if anybody knows a song about this story. Yeah, Lizzie, straight into the actors. Oh, do you want to come and do it, Sammy? And it was great to see the video, wasn't it? It was great to see that video. It's wonderful that the children do learn that. But it's not just a Sunday school story. It's not just a nice little story. It's actually a powerful warning. Remember how the parable ends, with one house standing strong, but with the destruction of the other. I think this story is meant to shock us a little bit, to wake us up, and to alert us to something that Jesus really wants to say. So I want to ask you this morning, are you listening? Are you listening? I heard this parable described like an onion. An onion has lots of layers, and there's layers to peel off in this parable. And each time we hear it, we can understand something new of what Jesus is trying to say. So let's be careful not to dismiss this story, to think, I know this one. But maybe God wants to peel off another layer this morning. So these few verses finish off Jesus' teaching on the Sermon of the Mount. He says, anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice. The words he's referring to are the teaching he's just delivered. Let me recap some of what he's been telling us. He's been teaching about the values of the kingdom. He's been teaching about being salt and light in the world. He's been teaching about not holding on to anger. He's been teaching about lust, about adultery and divorce. He's been teaching about swearing oaths and making promises. Teaching about loving your enemies. About giving in secret and not making a huge show of it. He's been teaching us how to pray, how to fast, where our treasure is and what we value the most. He's been talking about worry and anxiety, about judging others, and about asking God for what we need. I wonder which one of those challenged you the most. I wonder if there was anything that surprised you. Did you learn anything new? Just take a pause for a moment. What has stood out to you over the last few months? And if you're a visitor this morning, I'm sure you will have read the Sermon on the Mount, so you can cast your mind back over it. So when Jesus has finished all of this incredible teaching, he goes on to tell a little story about two men who built houses. And of course, in a parable, everything symbolizes something. So let's take a look at some of the deeper meaning. What does the house symbolize? Well, we need to remember that at the time of Jesus, there was no housing market. People didn't have mortgages. People didn't buy and sell houses in the way we do now. And people were a lot less transient than we are. Most homes were built on ancestral land, and many generations would live on one plot of land. So when a son got married, he and his wife would move into the family home, or some kind of extension would be built onto that home. And houses weren't just for rest and relaxation. They weren't just for watching Netflix and entertaining guests, although entertaining would go on. They were often your place of work as well. Whether you were a merchant, a fisherman, a farmer, your business would be run out of your house. There wasn't office blocks and business parks to drive to in the morning. Your identity, who you were, and everything you did was associated with your house. So when Jesus, a house came to symbolize your whole life. So when Jesus talks about two men building houses, he's talking about building a life. And we hear that one man was wise. And this term wise or wisdom is deeply embedded into Israel's wisdom tradition. In the book of Proverbs, remember, we meet Lady Wisdom. Of course, she was a woman, wasn't she? Lady Wisdom. And in chapters 8 and 9, we actually hear the words, wisdom builds her house. This is language that Matthew's original readers would be really familiar with. We hear that wisdom is better than jewels and that nothing can compare with her. Wisdom fears the Lord and walks in the path of righteousness and justice. And we also meet folly in Proverbs 9, or the foolish. Chapter 9, verse 13 of Proverbs, the foolish, oh, this is a woman as well. Unfortunately, it works both ways. The foolish woman is loud. She is ignorant and knows nothing. The word fool that Jesus used in this parable in the Greek is moros, which is where we get the word moron. That's right. It can be translated stupid, unintelligent, or unenlightened. So both these pictures of wisdom and foolishness were pictures that had been painted many times before in the Jewish scriptures. And so we hear, Lord is my rock and my fortress, my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge. Psalm 62, verse 2, truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken. In 1 Corinthians 10, verse 4, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. And for those who went away for our church weekend away, we looked at this passage. Behold, 1 Peter 2, behold, I am laying in Zion a stone, a cornerstone, chosen and precious, and whoever believes in him will not be put to shame. God is the dependable, immovable one that cannot be shaken. the firm foundation that a life can be built on. And we've sung about it already this morning. But the foolish man built his house upon the sand. Of course, first century Palestinians were probably more familiar with sand and desert than we are. But it's interesting that Jesus doesn't comment here upon the workmanship of the houses, only upon their foundation. Both houses may well have been built to a high standard, much care taken over the structure. And we reflect upon the thoughtful way that many people, whether Christian or not, might build their lives. I don't think we can be arrogant here enough to suggest that those who don't know God or don't allow his teachings give no thought or care to what goes into their lives. I don't think that would be fair or right. But it is the foundations that were the problem here. And the person who built on sand perhaps wanted to get it done too quickly, perhaps cut some costs without considering what they were building on. And then, of course, the storm comes. And note that the storm comes to both of the houses, the wise person's house and the foolish person's house. And we don't hear Jesus say, if the storm comes, but when the storm comes. Storms will come in life. Life is hard. Life has its challenges, some small, some great. Following Jesus is certainly not a free pass to a carefree life. Christians have to walk through suffering and pain, relationship breakups, cancer diagnosis, addictions, faith crisis, identity crisis, mental health crisis. And there's bigger national, global storms as well. We remember the COVID-19 pandemic, the climate crisis we're in, nations that threaten war. Storms will come to individuals, to the church, and to whole nations. And in this story, Jesus tells today, the house built on the rock stood firm. And the house built on sand fell. And it didn't just fall. If you read, it says, and its fall was great. We are left with a picture of a life that endures and a life that is swept away. And so, as we often do, I just want us to pause there. What has been familiar over the last 10 minutes? What surprised you? Have you thought of something new? Just pause for a moment. What question does it leave you with in your head? So, what does it all mean? Of course, the point of a parable is that you go away and talk about it. Let me encourage you to do that. To talk about it over lunch, talk about it with your kids, talk about it at house group, engage with it. One Jesus has just delivered. The goal of it is not to hear the words. It wasn't enough just to be present at one of those first hearers of this sermon on a hot, dusty day in Galilee. The fundamental aim of the Sermon on the Mount is to present Jesus and his kingdom vision for his kingdom people. And the only response to this sermon is to embrace Jesus, to accept the challenge, and to do what he says. It is not enough for us just to hear the words, to show up each week, to listen to the preacher. I hope you listen. To take notes. It's good to take notes. To journal. To read around it. To chat about it. We are actually supposed to go and live it. A good illustration would be my gym membership. About once a year, I decide it would be a great idea to go to the gym. Or to go to the gym. And of course, I will need some gym wear to go to the gym. And of course, I want to look good at the gym, so it has to be quite expensive. So I will go and I will buy some expensive gym wear to go to the gym. There's usually a trend as well about home workout equipment. You know, the latest thing that you have to have, and I have to have it because I'm going to go to the gym. My house is full of gym equipment that has never been used. I have dumbbells, I have Pilates mats, and I made quite a trek to buy a weighted hula hoop off Marketplace, which is just gathering dust. Is this familiar to anybody? Very, very familiar. You see, the thing is, unless you actually go to the gym, you don't need the membership. And you don't need that nice leggings and lycra top combo. You're actually supposed to go to the gym. Francis Chan told a story around this parable. He said it's like telling his daughter to go and tidy her room. An hour later, she comes back and he says, "Have you done it?" Imagine if she said, "No, but I understood what you were asking me." "No, but I actually wanted you to do it." She might respond, "No, it's okay, Dad, it's okay. I know what you asked me to do in Greek." Ridiculous. The point is, Jesus is saying the people who experience the fullness of God's life and kingdom are people who don't just hear the word, but they go and put it into practice. Hearing and understanding must lead us to obedience. Jesus said, "If you love me, obey my commands." James 1, "Do not merely listen to the words and so deceive ourselves. Do what it says." Following Jesus is not just in our heads. It's not just about information. And I think sometimes in the church we can overvalue information. We value people's intellectual ability to understand the Bible, to know a lot of stuff, or to get their doctrine and theology correct. Now, don't get me wrong. Biblical literacy and sound doctrine is so important. But Michael Moynier, who's an Anglican theologian, says this: Christian formation is primarily about changed lives. He points to a more embodied faith, not just stuff we know in our heads, not just information, but lived out in our bodies. And that is what Jesus did in the incarnation. He became Emmanuel, God with flesh on. He didn't just love us mentally in his head. He embodied his love by becoming flesh in the person of Jesus. He touched the leper. He spat and rubbed it into a blind man's eye. Do you remember that story? He bent down and drew in the sand when a woman was brought to him in judgment. And he physically hung on a cross. His body physically endured the pain. He felt it and experienced it. He didn't just think about it. When Thomas met the resurrected Jesus, he felt the scars in his hands and he physically put his hand in his side. That's what we do in communion, and that's why I love taking communion, because it's tangible, it's tactile. We can feel it and we can taste it. Faith is so much more than what we think or believe. It's about what we do. Martin Luther said this: the doctrine, meaning the teachings of the Bible, is a good and precious thing, and they are. But it is not being preached for the sake of being heard, but for the sake of action and application to life. Following Jesus means leaving a place of worship when you are prompted to by the Holy Spirit and going and asking for forgiveness from a neighbour who you're having a dispute with. It means praying for your enemy when what you want to do is swear at them or talk about them behind their back. It's serving at your local food bank. It's being generous with your money and your stuff, even when no one sees it. It's actually putting Jesus' words into practice. And I think the word practice here is really helpful. If you're sitting here thinking, I can't do this, it's too hard. I'm not Mother Teresa. Let me calm you down with this. I'm sure we understand or have experienced having to practice something. And in a musical instrument or a sport, the hours that go in to getting it right. There's discipline involved, and patience, and frustration, and you feel like giving up at times, and you get it wrong, and you feel like a failure. Does that sound like the Christian life? It sounds like mine. I don't think Jesus for a second is saying that the moment you walk out of here, you will never get angry again. People will just be able to push all your buttons and you'll be fine with it. Just cut you up in traffic and bless you, you know. I don't think it is that a quick fix. It is a way of life that we practice. It's about a heart attitude that says yes to Jesus, of inviting the power of God to help us and strengthen us and guide us and pick us up and forgive us when we fall. But we get back up again. We are to enter a lifelong journey of practicing the way of Jesus, and in doing so, forming ourselves day by day into people who willingly obey Jesus' commands. And there's no shortcut to this kind of discipleship. It is about daily choices. Don't know if you can read that. Eugene Peterson, who wrote the Message version of the Bible, wrote a book about discipleship with the wonderful title, A Long Obedience. A long obedience in the same direction. I just absolutely love that title. A long obedience in the same direction. What can help us with that? Coming together like this. Living in community. Not doing it alone. Being committed to gathering each week with our church family. To learn together. To grow together. Accountability. What helps me go to the gym? If I'm meeting a friend at a gym class. It's much, much easier to just stay at home if I haven't got that accountability. I said I would be there at the same time. Getting some close people around us and just being accountable to them with the things of Jesus' teaching that you find hard, and walking together with them. And finally, prayer and confession. Just finding your own quiet place with God where you can go, where you can gaze on him, where you can experience his power and infilling, a place where you can confess where you've messed up and ask for his grace to go again. They're just some simple things that can help us on this long obedience in the same direction. So let me finish with this. What kind of life are you building? How are your foundations? What do you need to practice? Which, perhaps one teaching of Jesus that we've heard over the last few weeks is the Holy Spirit nudging you about? Is there a next step you need to take? Not overdoing it and just forgetting everything else and just focusing on the one thing that Jesus might be saying to you. Like I said before, we've got some time to worship God now and to hear him speak to us. And it would be crazy, I think, if having delivered a sermon like that, I just asked you to think about it. So, we've got some rocks. They're quite big. They're not just going to slip in your pocket, these rocks. They're quite big. They're weighty. During any of the worship, but when we sing our first song, if there's something that you think, I need to ask God to help me to start living this teaching of Jesus out. I'm specifically thinking of something that I need to do. Come and get a rock. There's a few smaller ones. There's a few bigger ones. And take this rock. Get up out your seat. Do something. Take it. Think about it. And then we'll worship and we'll pray and we'll see what God's saying. And if you feel God's saying something to you that you would like to come and share, then just come and have a word with me. But we'll have some space before we move into communion.